The strongest earthquake since 2014 rocked much of Southern California.
We'll break down the 5.3 quake and show you how to stay safe during earthquakes. See it live begins now.
We are in the middle of an earthquake right now. At this second, my apartment is shaking and cracking, and everything is shaking back and forth, like this guy.
An earthquake hit off the coast of Southern California, and many people felt it. Good evening, I'm Drew Jones.
And I'm Allegra Miller. The quake caused some buildings to sway, but there are no reports of damage or injuries. The quake's epicenter was about 10 miles off Santa Cruz Island. Shaking was felt across the Channel Islands and along Southern California's coast, all the way from San Luis Obispo to San Clemente. It was initially detected by the U.S. Geological Survey at 12:29 p.m. No tsunami warning was issued. There was a 10-second warning of the quake thanks to an early warning system at the Caltech Seismology Lab. Annenberg Media's Madeline Audley is live in Pasadena outside the U.S. Geological Survey that issued the warning. Maddie?
Thanks so much, guys. We are here outside the U.S. Geological Survey building right on Caltech's campus in Pasadena, just down the road from USC. And up inside this building on the second floor is that early warning detection system we've all been hearing so much about. We had the chance to take a look at it earlier, and I want you guys to look at the screen now. We're going to zoom in on those numbers. They predicted this earthquake right around 12:29 p.m. That's just seconds before we felt that shake, right around 12:30. It was predicted to be around a 5.6 magnitude quake. Very close, though. It was reported later to be a 5.3. And if we zoom out now, you can take a look at the location. They predicted it right around where it was. I mean, 35 miles southeast of the Channel Islands. So this project they're ruling as a success today. It's still in the works in order to be, rolled out widespread throughout the entire West Coast. A lot of that comes down to funding. They had a small victory back in March in Washington where they were able to receive more than double their funds from last year. This year it's receiving $22.9 million. Last year, only $10.2. Still not enough for a widespread rollout. That whole project's going to cost about $38 million. And on top of that, it's going to be $16 million a year just to keep it up. The concept behind the system is very simple. The speed of sound going through the rocks of the shaking of the quake, which they're listening for, is actually slower than our modern communication channels. So it's a good sign for all of us, but again, it's really just going to come down to the funding. That's all we have here. Again, I'm Madeline Audley, standing at Caltech, and I'll send it back to you.
Thanks for that report, Maddie. The United States Geological Survey says there are about 500,000 earthquakes each year. Only 100,000 are typically felt, and about 100 actually cause damage. The Richter scale is used to describe the strength of an earthquake. The magnitude is basically how strong the earthquake is, and it's recorded by a seismograph. An earthquake's intensity can be labeled between numbers 1 and 10. Each number is then 10 times stronger than the previous one. The director of the Southern California Earthquake Center here at USC says the location of today's earthquake was important.
5.3 earthquake, it's a measure of kind of the energy released in the earthquake, and we have all sorts of technical definitions, but really essentially a 5.3 is something where if you were right on top of 5.3, it might knock over a few things. So it's at the level where it can start to cause damage, but we don't expect much damage. This is,
Seconds before the earthquake, Vidali says he and his colleagues were suddenly alerted by their early notification system.
Just fired up and it started to beep, and initially it was showing the waves kind of coming out from where the earthquake happened off the coast. We noticed the beeping before the shaking had reached us here in Los Angeles, so we actually had 5 or 10 seconds of warning from the new prototype earthquake early warning system.
Vidali says the warning system will hopefully be available for people to have in their homes within the next few years. While this earthquake was not strong enough to produce a tsunami, Annenberg Media's Trevor Sahaki shows us what would happen if there was a warning in place.
Thanks, Drew. Today's earthquake was centered about 10 miles or so under the ocean's surface. Many were concerned about the potential of a tsunami. Now, tsunamis are typically triggered by underwater earthquakes of around magnitude 7.5 or higher. During these quakes, the tectonic plates underneath the seafloor, as you can see right here, move up and down, pushing the water above into waves that can generate powerful tsunamis. One expert told us why we didn't have a tsunami today.
You have to have the fault move far enough to throw enough water that it makes a big wave. And it doesn't take that much motion to damage buildings. So it takes a big earthquake to cause a tsunami. And this is nowhere near big enough to cause a wave that we could even measure.
Now, tsunamis can leave major destruction in their wake. The 9.0 earthquake that hit Japan in 2011 was large enough to cause a tsunami. It destroyed more than 120,000 buildings. The damage totaled almost $200 billion. According to tsunami.gov, tsunami watches are sent out if waves may later affect an area. Warnings are issued when a tsunami with the potential to generate widespread flooding is expected or occurring. Now, if you see or hear any tsunami alerts, you should get to higher ground immediately. Allegra, over to you.
Thanks, Trevor. California is home to some of the strongest earthquakes in the United States. Although the greatest dangers lie within regions near major active faults, no area in the state is completely immune to potential quakes. This map shows the relative intensity of ground shaking and damage in California from earthquakes. The light portions inside the high-intensity areas indicate regions near major active faults. Here you will experience the most intense shaking. Earthquakes across California almost always occur in the top 15 miles of the Earth's crust. Here's a look back at some of the biggest quakes from the last 50 years. In 1971, a 6.6 earthquake struck the Sylmar-San Fernando area. The quake caused 65 deaths and over $500 million in property damage. The majority of deaths resulted from the collapse of the Veterans Administration Hospital. Several other hospitals in the area also suffered severe damage. In 1989, the Loma Prieta earthquake hit 10 miles northeast of Santa Cruz. The 7.1 quake occurred during the World Series and lasted for 15 seconds. It caused severe damage across the greater San Francisco Bay Area, reaching as far as 70 miles from its epicenter. The quake caused 63 deaths and almost 4,000 injuries. In 1994, a 6.7 earthquake occurred 20 miles northwest of Los Angeles in the community of Northridge. It resulted in 57 deaths and $20 billion in damage, making it the most expensive earthquake in California's history. The majority of damage came from the collapse of major freeways all over the city. This was the first earthquake to directly strike an urban area of the United States in almost 50 years. Even with the shaking today, the California earthquake eruption forecast says the state is still overdue for a major earthquake.
Today, the Los Angeles Fire Department tweeted their response protocol, also known as earthquake mode. More than 100 firefighters went out and did a survey of the city, looking for serious injuries or damages. LAFD was out immediately at freeway overpasses, Dodger Stadium, LA universities, apartment buildings, dams, and power lines. Earthquake mode is typically completed in less than an hour. The fire department later tweeted that they didn't find any injuries or noticeable damages as a result of today's earthquake.
Campus was buzzing today after the earthquake. We spoke with students and faculty who felt the 5.3 magnitude earthquake. Surprisingly, not many were scared by the shake.
And I think the energy, it brought the energy in the room up, so I view that as a good thing, especially because we're in academics and we're talking about grades and talking about finals and midterms, and a lot of times student athletes and students in general, they're kind of stressed out, so I think any energy is positive energy.
I actually didn't even know there was an earthquake. No.
I was just confused, I guess, but it was, I guess it's good to know that earthquakes aren't scary.
I wasn't sure if it was happening at first because my doors were going back and forth, and then I was pretty sure it was an earthquake, and I looked it up and it was an earthquake.
The more than 400 volunteers take it very seriously.
Faculty and staff for earthquakes. The biggest simulation is held in October, and it's called the Great Shakeout. One emergency planning specialist laid out what USC will do during a big quake.
The Department of Public Safety has a plan where they patrol the campus and all the areas to make sure that there's no damage or reports of people stuck in elevators or injuries. And then if it turns out to be an earthquake where we do start seeing any kind of damage, then our facilities management department will do damage assessment where they systematically will check all the buildings to ensure that they are safe for re-entry.
In the event of an earthquake, Goldfarb said students should stop, drop, and hold on. If there's no table to hide under, he said to stand near an inside wall. The biggest priority is to protect your head and neck. Ironically, there was a drill at the university's health science campus an hour before the earthquake struck this afternoon. Allegra has more on what to pack in your emergency quake kit. Allegra?
That's right, Charlotte. Earthquakes can strike without warning, and that's why the California Department of Public Health recommends having a quake kit on hand. These emergency kits can cost upwards of $100 and be purchased online via Amazon or Stealth Angel Survival, but there are definitely much cheaper options, including making your own. The California Department of Public Health recommends a kit that will last for at least 3 days. Your kit could include a gallon of water for each day, non-perishable canned foods, and a first aid kit. You should also pack blankets, a tent, and personal hygiene items such as tissues and toothbrushes. Lastly, remember to bring your phone, ID, and cash.
I didn't even feel today's earthquake, Allegra. How about you?
I have to tell you, Drew, I didn't feel it either. I was just on my bike, just going about my day. I had no idea.
There you go. At least it was just a 5.3. Thanks for watching See It Live from everyone at Annenberg Media. I'm Drew Jones.
And I'm Allegra Miller. You can watch us on the web at uscannenbergmedia.com.